of course, we are continuing with this discussion in studio here with me, Andrew Muruka, who is the Deputy Director at the Directorate of Occupational Health, Occupational Safety and Health Services, as well as Chris Waithaka, who works with the legal team here at the Standard Group. This, of course, we're having this discussion ahead of the World Day for Safety and Health at Work, which is marked tomorrow. And just before we went on break, we were talking about, emergency preparation at workplaces. The statistics that we read earlier globally are really shocking, that up to 6,300 people die every day. Maybe what are some of the situations that lead to such deaths? And if we can talk about the emergency preparedness of workplaces, especially in our context here in Kenya.
Thank you very much. Accidents are caused by what you call hazards. And hazards are things that are in the workplace that can cause harm. And they are categorized in different ways. We have biological hazards, which are basically biological in nature. We have chemical hazards, and those are substances that exist either as solids, liquids, or gas in the work environment, and they can cause harm too. Then we have machinery. Machinery is one of the major causes of occupational accidents and injuries. And we also have physical hazards like noise at the work environment. We have vibration and radiation. So all these are what can cause accidents and injuries at the workplace. And also not to forget what we call the psychosocial hazards. People who are harmed by poor human relations, caused by mainly, different psychosocial levels. So these are some of the things that cause harm to people at the work environment.
All right, and just talking about the psychosocial kind of hazards that you speak about, because this is something that's not as tangible as something like fire or whatnot. What kind of then safety do employers have to offer in this regard to ensure the psychosocial wellness of their employees?
Now, one and most important aspect of managing psychosocial hazards is to have in place policies that address the issue. Within the policy itself, the employer will be able to put an organizational structure that addresses how psychosocial hazards can be identified and controlled. So he will assign people responsibilities within the work environment who are able to identify these issues. And secondly, he's supposed to put in place measures to encourage what we call communication, consultation, and cooperation between the employer himself and the employees, so that employees are free to report these hazards to their supervisors. Once they are reported to the supervisors, there should be a mechanism within that policy framework to address the specific issues that are giving conflict. In that process, the employer is able to identify them, and the mechanism put in place is able to address those particular issues.
Right. And Chris, from a legal perspective, should an employee fall victim to an occupational and a health hazard in the workplace, what kind of protection is offered in a legal kind of parameter on the national perspective? Perhaps the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Do we talk to us about what steps a person would take, and how often has it really come to compensate all victims of such hazards?
Okay, very well. Sharon, the Office of the Director of Occupational Safety and Health actually has that mandate to ensure that there is compliance. In every area, there has to be an occupational safety and health officer, whereby any incident, it's actually provided for in that every incident, it doesn't matter how small it is, has to be reported. And that incident goes to the Director of Occupational Health and Safety, Occupational Safety and Health. Basically, it already provides for the steps that you need to take.
Right.
And also that same office, at any given point, that officer can make an impromptu inspection. In the event maybe he feels and feels, or there has been reported that an accident, for example, has happened maybe in a factory, he can go in and inspect, and then from that, the employer, the director, can give compensation. There is also an act called the Work Injury Benefits Act. The act provides for the direction or the steps that one should take in the event you feel that you are injured at work and that you deserve compensation. It's actually not deserving, it's actually your right. In the event you are injured when you're working, the employer has a duty to ensure that they compensate you to either continue working, or if you're not able to continue working, the ministry, which I think now was combined, it's under the Ministry of East Africa and Labour,
Right.
The ministry, together now with the director, the Office of the Director of Occupational Safety and Health, has set out the figures. If it is terminal, if it is fatal, how much is this person entitled to?
Okay.
In terms of, I would say, implementation, I think there is a disconnect, and I would actually be sympathetic to him because I believe in terms of even the manpower that he has, it becomes very difficult to implement the act as is, and hopefully eventually we'll get there in terms of safety. Yeah.
Okay, and just to engage our viewers on our Twitter poll this morning, which is based on this discussion we're having, we are asking you, what health and safety situations have you encountered at work? What health safety situation have you encountered at work? Do share with us your experiences as we continue with this conversation. You can tweet me at Sharon_Momanyi, at KTN News, and I shall sample your views as we continue with this discussion. Just one more time, what health safety situation have you encountered at work? Right, and maybe if you can talk about still here by way of example, so that we are not sticking at the policy levels and not having practical examples. Here at the Standard Group, I remember the other day we had the fire drill. What kind of general framework do we have to ensure safety of workers and the health of workers?
I think something I have personally experienced at the Standard is that there has been extensive training. Some of the guys walking around are actually fire marshals. There are people who can deal with that situation when it arises before the help comes. There has also been, management has been deliberate in taking up this issue of safety at the workplace. And we previously did not have a department on occupational safety and health. There's now a working department, and I believe he would confirm our compliance levels may be at around 50, 60, or maybe 70, and by the end of the year we should be at 100.
Okay, Andrew, as you confirm that, I know that I know there are also awards, to companies. This is with regard to their level of compliance.
Yes. Yeah.
Just talk to us about that a bit.
Well, I think Waidaka knows the compliance level for Standard Group and KTN. Workplaces which participate in the National Occupational Safety and Health Awards do so voluntarily. And maybe that is why you have not participated this year. And many other companies have not participated. It is purely voluntary process. And we advertised in the national dailies.
So you apply to be considered?
Yeah, so you apply to be considered, and you assess yourself in the first instance. And then once you have assessed yourself, you bring that information to the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services. Now, once we receive that information, together with your application, we actually pay actual visits to those workplaces. So we'll assign various auditors, 3 or 4 auditors to specific workplaces that have applied.
Right.
And based on that, they will be scored. And the best, the second best, and the third best, if those words exist, are awarded at the national award ceremony. which is always the World Day for Safety and Health at work.
All right.
Yeah.
And even as we come to the end of our discussion, let's take a look at the overall state, of compliance as a country. And of course, this is all in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 8, talking about a decent work environment and economic growth. To what extent would you say that employers are compliant to this, expected levels of occupational health and the goodwill thereof? And to what extent also are employees aware of their rights?
Thank you. First of all, there are different types of employers. We have multinational companies that operate in several countries, and they also operate within the country. We have national companies, and we have micro, small, and medium enterprises. You cannot rate them on the same scale. Multinational companies, especially in countries with strict enforcement of safety and health standards, have a little bit higher compliance level. And they also do not just comply, they go beyond compliance and deal with issues like making workplaces comfortable for the employees. On the side of national companies, companies that operate within the country, they also have different compliance levels. First, based on whether they have competent advisors, some companies have employed safety and health managers, like Standard Group has a safety manager. You don't expect Standard Group to have the same compliance level with another company, which does not have a safety manager to address the safety issues on a daily basis. And then finally, the micro, small, and medium enterprises, where you are employed and you are one person. That is a micro enterprise. And you have to decide whether you want to be safe or not. And for the government even to reach you, it can take years because you are just an individual. You can decide to operate under a tree. Or by the roadside.
All right.
So
finally, Chris, your final comments very briefly as we wind up. What kind of legal awareness do employees need to have, both employees and employers in the country?
I believe more awareness is required. Forums like these should be encouraged, knowing the repercussions of maybe failure to follow safety regulations. It is necessary that there's more awareness to the people. And basically, each and every person should realize that in every environment that you are, when you're employed, even notifying your employer is actually a duty. You should notify your employer that this place is not safe. And you can actually not be discriminated against on the basis of saying, I can no longer work under these unsafe conditions.
All right. Many thanks, gentlemen.